Hey there, welcome to Board Game Barrister, also known as Wayback Tours, because today we played Trekking Through History, an awesome game where we have won a 3-day tour through time, and we're going to try to see all the best stuff, hang out with all the best historical figures, and do it better than our fellow players did. I'm here with my fellow barristers, Ian and Elizabeth, and we're going to talk you through everything we thought about the game and what we liked about it, but first, let's talk about how to play. Welcome to Trekking Through History, a game where we're going on a 3-day tour through time to see and do as much as we can. The game is split into 3 days, and in each of those days, we're going to have a separate deck of events that we can take part in, people we can meet, all that good stuff from history, and each of those days is going to take place over the 12 hours on this clockboard here. Here I am at the beginning of my first day, and the one choice I have to make every day is which of these cards do I want to go do? So my options right now range all the way from cheering at the ancient Olympics in 708 BCE, all the way to sculpting with Michelangelo in the 1500s. Now it often helps to choose dates that happened earlier because you have to follow the time stream chronologically as you're building a trek through time. So I might start with those ancient Olympics in 708 BCE, and there's a few things I have to look at on the card here. This is the beginning of a new trek for me, so the date doesn't actually matter until I start adding more dates after it, but the two things I do want to look at the bottom of that card are the time it takes me to visit, so it's going to take me 2 hours to cheer at those Olympics, and I'm going to mark that off by moving my piece 2 spots along the clockboard. And the other part of taking a card is getting rewards for it. So I'm always going to start by looking at the symbol underneath where I took the card from. In this case, it is a blue event experience token, and then my card itself will have symbols. This one has another event experience on it, so I get a second blue. So what do we do with our tokens? Well, they immediately go into our travel itinerary. So I'm going to turn to my itinerary and look in the blue column. I've got 2 tokens, and I'm going to start filling in from top to bottom, which could earn me additional rewards like some time tokens, which we'll talk about in a sec, and some points. After we've spent our time and then gained our rewards for the event we went and took part in, we are going to shift everything to the right, and then it'll be the next player's turn. And then while you're waiting for it to come around to your next turn, you can flip your card over and read some actual historical facts about that event. Now, as your other players are going, they're going to be spending time just like you did, and they're going to continue to move their pieces out around that board. Interestingly, this game does not get played in clockwise order in a set player order. Instead, the next person to go will always be the person who's farthest back on that clockboard. So in this case, yellow would go before we get yet another turn. They're going to take their second turn. Maybe they'd end up somewhere like here. And then finally, it's our turn again. Now, your second turn is where you'll have the opportunity to actually start building out your trek into more additional chronological events. If I look at my current options, I've got a card that is in 221 BCE, still pretty early, but later on than the one I've already got, which is great. This one would give me a blue token and a red token. We've already got so much blue on our board here though, so maybe I'm going to go learn the Art of War from Sun Tzu for that red token and another time crystal there. Speaking of timed crystals, as I add this in chronological order to my trek here, this would cost me 2 time normally, but maybe in this case I decide that I'd like to go next again by only going once and ending up on top of everyone last in line here. To do this, I can spend one of my time crystals, back to the supply, to reduce my hours spent by 1. You can do this as many times as you want, but you always have to spend at least 1 hour doing the event you choose. And the longer that trek gets, the more points it's going to be worth at the end of the game, so you want to keep looking for dates that can continue to extend that chronology, but eventually you might just run out of cards in the row to choose from that would continue your trek chronologically, or you might see one out there that's an earlier day than your current date, but is too good to pass up. And when this time comes, you can choose to end the trek that you're currently on by turning those cards over in a pile, and starting afresh with a new one. At the end of the game, we're going to look at all of those treks, and each of them is going to score based on how long it is. Now, once our time tokens have moved around that clock and everybody has reached the end of the 12 hours they have available to them, that means it's the end of day 1, and we're going to move on to day 2, which means removing the day 1 deck and then shuffling up the day 2 deck and tossing those out on the board and filling out that timeline with those. And additionally, each player is going to clear their itinerary and get a new one. So at the end of the day, the 2 main ways you're gaining points in this game is by filling in those point symbols on your itinerary cards and by completing longer treks. If you could pull off both, that's great, but often you have to choose between one or the other, and that's where the real gameplay comes in. Alrighty, so we just finished our first ever game of Trekking Through History, and we really liked it. It took us about an hour to play. That was with learning the rules, so we'd say probably 45 minutes to an hour every time you play, as long as you're thinking about as hard as we were, which was pretty hard. We were trying to make all the right decisions and make the right calls for our trips through time. If you played the game more casually, you could probably play it in 20 or 30 minutes. And then obviously we played with 3 players today. That felt really great. There was 2 players between your turns. There's nothing really that you're doing on other players' turns to interact, but we're going to talk about how they put some really cool flavor in the game to keep you entertained in the interim. And we also really liked that this game would play great with 2 players. Let's talk about what we thought.
So there are a bunch of different strategies you can go for to try and score points in Trekking Through History, and each one of them felt pretty engaging and interesting in their own right, and each one had a bunch of different decisions you can make to try and fulfill those strategies, from making your trek as long as possible and visiting as many different points in time, to completing as many of the objectives on your itinerary as possible, which is what I went for, and scoring. Some of the scoring is done during the gameplay, and some of the scoring is done at the end of the game. So there's this big surprise moment where Elizabeth saved all of her points till the end and almost jumped and took the win, whereas I felt really good because I like to be rewarded incrementally through a game, and I felt really rewarded incrementally because I was going for objectives on my itinerary, which allowed me to peg points and score points throughout the gameplay. For sure.
1, 2, 3,
Look at that
4,
track.
5,
It's worth,
6,
what, 36
7,
points?
8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Just
so
casually
It's worth
strolling.
36 points.
36.
36.
Wait, what are you at?
47.
47 and 36.
That's 70.
83. Wow,
83?
look how close. Look how close this game is.
That's crazy cool. And we all kind of did different strategies.
So, Trekking Through History is this big, beautiful game, and I actually find it really, really accessible for 4 different reasons. First of all, I'm a big history nerd, but my friends and family do not have to know history to play this game with me. I get rewarded with all the cool notes about the people and the events and places in history, and I get that history hit, and you don't have to know anything to be competitive against me. Number 2, I feel like because there are so many different types of strategies you can employ in this game, you can actually switch strategies mid-game and you're not punished for it. I don't have to know what I'm doing from the get-go. I don't have to have a hard and fast strategy that I'm dedicated to. The third thing that I think really makes this game accessible is that I don't have to be mentally engaged throughout everybody's turn. I can make my decision, place my card, and kick back a little bit, read my flavor text, enjoy the banter. I can watch the board state obsessively if I want to, but I don't have to. The fourth thing that really makes this game accessible, in my eyes, is how intuitive all of the tokens and strategy really were. It kind of looks like a game with a lot of pieces, but I did not have to keep referring back to the instructions, like what does this symbol do? How do I, make this action occur? I didn't have to keep remembering what my options were because my options were very intuitive and clear to me on the board state.
Crystals
I'm gonna do
later.
the 25.
Yeah.
Hop me 2. I'm gonna get double blue.
1, 2.
Hate to see it.
You love
And
to
I
see
get
it.
2 points.
Love to see it for me.
4, 26.
Well, obvious choice is obvious. Let me just make sure it is.
Rosa.
Double check.
Rosa's good
Rosa for
right
sure.
now.
Like I get yellow that I need, I get a red that I need, and a green that I need.
I really want that 1909 now.
And I get to go a second time if I.
Yeah, on its surface, this game is. We were finding ourselves kind of getting in our heads about making pretty thinky decisions about just the right card and how can I perfectly use the time I have left on the clock here to get just the right cards and make the perfect decisions. So it could be taken, like if they had just put in those mechanics, it would be kind of a cold, thinky, brainy, abstract game without a lot of heart to it. But they filled it with like flavor and beautiful art and all sorts of stuff. So from like every single card in the game having different artwork of the actual events and people that you're visiting, to the board being a neoprene mat that is just beautiful and rolls up into the box. It's just pleasant to be sitting at the table playing this game and just kind of looking out at all the nice components and art. So kudos to them for doing like a really good job just filling the box with like beautiful things so that while you're sitting here you can be reading about history while somebody else is taking their turn and then flip over and look at the event with kind of a new light. So it was great. We had a great time with it and hope we get to play again soon. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining us on our tour through history with Trekking Through History. We had a great time playing. Hope you had a great time watching and the game looked fun to you too. If you want to see more videos like this when we post them every single Tuesday, hit that subscribe button and you'll get to watch us every week. Hit the comment if you want to leave a comment. Hit that like if you want the YouTube algorithm to show this video to more people. We really appreciate all that, and we will see you next week.